Gembak Star, and when you look at these comics, you can detect a strong manga influence. Set up in 1998, Gembak is a Malaysian comic gaming hobby magazine, and coming in the wake of the 1997 Asian financial crisis, the story of Gembak paralleled the penetration and influence of globalization in local culture. The success of Gembak as an info comic magazine on ACG, animation, comics and games, especially those of Japan, had led to its own line of comic books, published in Malay and later translated to Chinese and English. But the art style is distinctively manga, for good or bad. And recent interviews with Gembak Star artists show that they wear their influences on their sleeves. And I'm going to quote you too. This is from an artist by the name of Keith. Japanese comics rule. When I was young, I read Japanese comics even before I started schooling. It's hard to condense how I feel about this comic industry that's produced such great work in only a few words. All I can say is that the success of the Japanese comics reflects the persistence, tenacity and intensity of the Japanese people. Malaysians just do not feel so strongly about things. There's no comic culture in Malaysia, so perhaps we need to carve out a niche in the local comic scene first. Okay, this is a quote from a second artist, a female artist by Kairu. I believe I'm like one of the many who got involved in the comic industry after being influenced by Japanese comic artists. Now, when asked about the Malaysian comic industry, most artists felt that their scene has still some way to go. Although it's unfair to compare Malaysian comics to Japanese manga, most are comfortable drawing in the manga style, hoping to develop their own style in time to come. But the fact is that Malaysia already has their own style as pioneered by LAT. But with globalization, the popularity and spread of manga worldwide and market demands, younger Malaysian artists are seeking their own route within the manga style and by drawing the manga style. I attended the inaugural Animation Asia Conference in 2009 in Singapore last month, and the Japanese market share for anime and manga were only set to grow in this region. To give you an example, there's a growth of doujin works, 同人志, by groups like Collateral Damage Studios in in Singapore. And this example is this Little Busters doujin book put out at last month's Anime Festival Asia in Singapore. Okay, I'm just going to, this cover is by Singaporeans, alright, a tribute to Little Busters. Okay, I'm going to do a test now. I'm going to show you another 4 images, and can you tell me which one is done by Singaporeans, which one is done by Japanese? Okay, this is number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. One of these is the original, one of these is the Japanese. 3 of them is done by Singaporeans. So is it number 1, number 2, number 3, or number 4? Any answer?
I think number 3 is Japanese.
Number 3 is Japanese. Anyone else? The answer is number 4. This one is Japanese. Alright, the first 3 is done by Singaporeans. Okay, even established comic artists like Troy Chin in Singapore are moving into manga-inspired territory and format. Troy Chin, most recent work is Loti. It's a homage to Azumanga Doe by Ayo Haiko Azuma. So you can see the difference or the similarity between the two. On the left is the Singaporean comic. On the right, of course, is the Japanese manga translated into English. And I give you the 2 examples. Again, on the left is Singapore, and on the right is the original Japanese manga. So you can see it's very similar in style. And it's about students, right, in school uniform. Therefore, by looking at the recent publishing history of Malaysian comic books, we get a sense of the impact of globalization on the comic industries there. Right, extrapolating from that, we can see how global forces are affecting local culture and economy as the local artists adapt to the market demands of foreign comic art styles. Again, I'm presenting this with the hope that having a sense of history will inspire local artists to embrace their own tradition and style, so that even if they adapt to a more international format and art style, there's still room for local content and concerns such as political changes happening in Malaysia today. So any of you who are following Malaysia news, you know that a lot of things happening in Malaysia today in terms of politics. So therefore, the context determines the text in both Singapore and Malaysia. Alright, the lack of political cartoons in Singapore is a result of present political realities. And the prominence of manga-style comics in Malaysia is a result of the impact of globalization. With that, thank you, and I welcome your comments.